What's up, guys? Welcome back. Now, today we've got a bit of a different one, to be fair. This is the Unit 731 experiments, and these experiments are possibly the worst examples of human experimentation done in the history of our race, to be fair. How do you describe it? I think nothing less than pure evil would be kind to it, basically. So, warning, this isn't going to be nice, this isn't going to be pretty, it's going to be pretty harrowing, to be fair, so I understand this might not be for everyone, but I found it very interesting, and hopefully you do too, because I feel like it is a part of history that not a lot of people are aware of, so let's get into it. So, Unit 731, it began as a public health agency in Japan, but during World War II, it grew into the centre of weaponized diseases, which, if deployed, could kill the human race several times over. Their aim was to achieve weaponizing the plague to use it against their enemies during the World War who tried to invade, and they achieved this through unlimited suffering of prisoners of war, basically. So the first specific test I'm going to get into is frostbite testing, and this was performed by Yoshimura Hozuta, who was a physiologist who was obsessed by the idea of hypothermia. So what he would do is he would place the prisoners of war's limbs into vats of freezing cold water, or he would lock them outside during the winter months until the limb resembled basically a sheet of ice, is what eyewitnesses said. They said it looked more like a plank of wood that had been beaten by a cane than an actual human hand. And obviously that's how it starts. But then he became obsessed with how does he reverse it? How can you cure it? Sometimes he would do it by holding the limb over an open fire, which is horrendous, brutal, or putting the limb into boiling hot water, which basically might cure the hypothermia, but at the same time would burn the person's arm to bits. Basically, it would no longer be usable. Or, and this is possibly more cruel, is he would just leave the suspects, and he would just see how long it would take the blood to naturally thaw out the limb, which obviously would result in the subject losing the limb. So that's the first one, and it's kind of starting off lightly, to be fair. The next one we're going to do is doctors injecting sexual diseases, mainly syphilis, into the suspects, because syphilis was rife among armies at the time, and they wanted to see how they could deal with it, cure it, so that their army would be stronger than everyone else's. They would have one less problem than their enemies, basically. So they would either inject the disease into the suspects, or they would make prisoners rape male and female prisoners with the disease. And if that didn't work, they would organise more rapes on different prisoners later on until they had been infected, basically. So they would either withhold medication for this to observe the uninterrupted pattern of the disease and what it would attack, how would it make you weaker, eventually how would it kill you, or they would use test drugs to witness possible side effects to determine whether or not they were safe to use it on the actual army or for the public. And the last one that I'm going to do, but it's definitely the worst, is vivisection. Fucking hell, big words. Vivisection on conscious patients. Now, what this is surgery, basically. They would cut them open without putting them to sleep and without giving any anesthetics. So you're fully awake, fully aware of what's going on. And this was done by a doctor, simply went by Maruto. So he would give the people diseases like the bionic plague, and he would cut them open and see how the organs are affected. It started off with volunteers from the army because he lied about what the experiment would entail, and it was basically all consented to start. They had to get consent to go ahead with it, but misinformed the people who signed up for it. But then after a while, after it started killing the volunteers and word got out that, like, you shouldn't do it, they would just take prisoners of war from China mainly, and on a rare occasion civilians. So as I said, there was no anesthetic, and if they weren't satisfied with the information they got from that, what they would do is they would cut off both arms of the subject, and they would sew them onto the opposite end. So your right one would become your left one, your left one would become your right one, and they would just see if they could have been used on opposite sides, or how long it would take for diseases and infection to kick in. And after they were done with all these experiments, they either shot them, they gave them a lethal injection, or they buried them alive. And there was no survivors that came out of the Unit 731 experiments. Every single one that came in, whether willingly or not, was killed either by the actual experiment itself or by the doctors afterwards when they felt like they didn't need them anymore. So, end on a high note. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it around. And yeah, thank you very much.